I'm Gab, he's Rob Palmer. That's right, Jules has some important family commitment this morning, so we kind of got future Jules. This is what Jules will look like in 10 years or so.
Yeah, Jules is handsome stunt double.
Exactly. Wow, Champions League, so much to get into. We're starting to get closer to the final verdicts here, which is kind of neat. And 3 teams have been eliminated. Sorry, Young Boys, Slovan, and Leipzig. No, Leipzig, not sorry. Not sorry at all. But we have to start with another team that's having a really tough time. Could potentially be facing elimination. And that's Manchester City. They go away to Juventus, where Thiago Motta is getting killed with people saying, you're supposed to bring fun and excitement. This is boring. You're worse than Allegri. No, you play the same football as Allegri, but with worse results. And they lose 2-0. There's a stat that since early November, City have conceded more goals than any team in Europe's Big Five. Now, that needs to be contextualized. I think they've also played more games because they play in the Champions League and say Southampton don't. But it's pretty awful what's happening if you're a City fan.
It's yeah. I mean, my wife and my son is City fans, so I can speak from experience and her kind of throwing cushions around the front room and coming home in a bad mood from seeing City games. And I went with her last week to see the Nottingham Forest game as well, and they're in a really, really bad place. I think. You know, but Pep looks a broken man at the moment. There's obviously things going on behind the scenes as well. But on the field of play, they look slow. They look sluggish. They look like they've kind of lost the plot. It's not the Manchester City that we knew. And I think it's actually coming down, Gab, to mismanagement. You look at the players that they've allowed to go. Alvarez, Cole Palmer's doing well, and the players that they brought in, Docker, Savio. They haven't replenished the team. And I saw them last week, and they got 4 giants at the back. We used to have City playing these inverted fullbacks and Pep reinventing the game. And they just look devoid of ideas at the moment.
Okay, so the 4 big dudes at the back, I'll just reflect slightly on this.
Yeah.
And by the way, thank you for not mentioning Rodri's absence, which, really is very important.
It's not that
but
simple.
It can't be
it
the
is
only
not that
reason.
simple. Okay, you've lost the best player in the world, but it's not that simple.
But the idea of, as one manager put it, him playing 4 center backs so the strikers can attack. He did that last year, and it worked out pretty well for him. I think it is a natural evolution of Pep, in the sense that maybe when he had more energy and more trust in his front 4, he would be comfortable with winning the ball further up the pitch. Now he's no longer comfortable with that, or last season he wasn't perhaps as comfortable with it. So he played essentially 4 center backs at the back, plus Rodri, and said, all right, these 5 guys attack and these 5 guys defend. And, well, Rodri does a bit of both. And now you can't do that anymore because the players are older. They're a little sharper. The ball circulation, I think, is a lot worse. Gundogan, he has that shot, but other than that, isn't necessarily adding much. And so you get this sad sight of Erling Haaland, who just doesn't get the service. He's not... this was last night. I thought he had maybe 2 chances. One, the De Bruyne one, which he probably should have scored, and he had this other wonky header. That is on Pep on not making the right adjustment.
Absolutely, and again, it might be the recruitment thing as well. And you could have that age-old argument that when Pep was at Barcelona and he had Ibrahimovic available to him, Barcelona were not at the best. They had a good season. He's now got Haaland there, and he's playing with a big central striker. And is that really the Pep way? When you look at Alvarez, it's surprising how many games Alvarez played when he was at Manchester City. You don't think of him as a starter, but he was a really important player for them. They've lost that kind of alternative for Haaland to go off. And you look at the 4, as you say, the 4 big guys at the back, the big dudes at the back, as you say, but they're like stewards on the gate. They don't move. They're just in these sentry posts, whereas you used to Cancelo making a move inside, or the younger Walker doing things as well. And
but again, they didn't have those guys. They played like they had that same setup last season.
But they were younger and they were fresher last year.
They were a year younger last year, and they had Rodri. See, it all comes back to Rodri. No, I'd also argue that certainly over the summer, adding Savinho, it is a big jump for him. He's still a very young player. It's easy to forget that. So expecting that level of consistency all season long was perhaps going to be a bit of a stretch. They've had other injuries as well. Kovacic still out. I'm just struck. And by the way, Juve, we will get to you. You deserve credit. I was just struck by what Pep said afterwards, where it felt like after the Feyenoord game, he was very critical of his players. This time around, he basically, I'm paraphrasing here, he says, I've questioned myself, fair enough. but I think this is the right way to play, and we just need to do it better. All right, Rob, what do you make of this, of the double down, which just shades of the whole like, well, plan B is doing plan A and doing it better, which I think originally was a Cruyff quote. I think before that, I'm sure there's others who've said that. I think it makes sense. Is it just a question of poor execution, or is actually his plan A not as effective?
Look, there's a Pep style of playing, and that's what he did at Barcelona. That's what he did at Bayern. That's what he's done so successfully.
No. I don't buy it. I push back. This is where I get a bully. I get accused of interrupting people. I go full on early Bill O'Reilly here. There's a Pep style, but it's completely evolved and changed over the years.
There is a Pep style. I mean, there isn't a Pep style, but what he does, he changes the game. He evolves his football. There's a Pep way of playing, and then he gets that into his players. But what he also does, he looks to the bench and he refreshes it. It brings players on. He likes to keep a squad. He always famously keeps a squad of about 16, 18 players, and then brings 3 or 4 in every game. And he's looking at the moment, he's looking to the bench, and he hasn't got Foden this season. He hasn't got any kids coming through as well. He's lost Bob. We won't mention Rodri again because that's kind of old news. And he doesn't have the alternative. So what he's trying to do is this style that you mentioned last year, the 4 big guys at the back. He's playing this style, but he doesn't have the ability to push a button and change it and look along the bench and bring somebody on whose eyes are bright. Everybody looks tired. De Bruyne looks tired. Gundogan looks tired. Bernardo Silva looks tired. He doesn't have an alternative for Haaland. He's got a style, but he doesn't have an alternative. And I mean, they've got this fantastic academy, haven't they? Is it 10 years they've been there? There's nothing coming through. How many millions have they spent on recruiting players? Well, there may be some that are doing well elsewhere around Europe that you might have mentioned.
There's plenty coming through. It's just that they're not at Manchester City, which is another stick you can. And that Cole Palmer fella's pretty good too.
He's doing okay.
I think there's an argument there also that City would argue that they needed to balance the books. I think the fact that in the summer, they got Savinho from their friendly sister club.
Yeah.
And then obviously Gundogan for free. Now we can go back and say, well, instead of Gundogan, why?
But before that, it was Docker. Before that, it was Phillips. They very rarely made a mistake in the transfer market bringing players in Manchester City. But Phillips didn't work out. Gundogan came back. He's not been a hit. Savio, I saw a lot of him in Spain. He's a good player, but ideally,
he's very young.
The Pep way, he'd be giving him a dozen games a season, like he did with Foden. He would bleed him, bringing out, like he did with Bob, like he did with Rico Lewis. But he hasn't been dependent. Docker, I don't think has hit the standards of being a top 3 player in the English Premier League or the Champions League either.
I really like Doku. I think he's somebody who, I know he had a poor game last night. I think he's somebody who can give you more and can bring that energy which they need. I would like to see him look at the players, and I wonder if on the recruitment piece there wasn't a sense that his contract was expiring at the end of the season, right? We see this all the time with coaches with older players with whom they've won a lot. They say, all right, screw this, let's keep the gang together, one last dance, blah, blah, blah. And I think that was perhaps some of the mindset that was going in. City perhaps reluctant to go and spend money to freshen up the squad, thinking that Pep was going to leave, as he was supposed to. And so you end up stuck in this situation where suddenly a lot of these players feel old all of a sudden. What I would question is some of these guys, John Stones is fine when he's there.
Yep.
The man's always hurt. Like the number of games that Stones has missed over the years.
Yep.
Somebody, they say that the best ability is availability. I'm not saying he's a bad player, but this I think should and could have been addressed sooner. Kyle Walker fell off a cliff a long time ago. All these people, I don't know, this obsession with Kyle Walker's pace. I mean, when people talk about this, what are they like going back 10 years or something?
I think it's quick for a guy of his age and his experience as well. But when I'm commentating, I look at grids and I look at players, how many games they played, and you get to this time of the year, and Pep would be looking to Kyle and saying, I've not played you for a few weeks, but could you come back and do me a job at right back for a few games? And we've got to Christmas a few years and think he's going to head off to somewhere else and from City. But now he's the first name on the team sheet out of necessity. Stones has been injured in previous years, but you've not mentioned it because City have had 4 or 5 central defenders to pick from, and now it's Stones isn't there, Rodri isn't there, and you're looking at who's not there rather than who is there and not doing a job.
Well, I'll tell you who is there. I mean, he had an injury, okay, but you never quite know. Does he have an injury or does he just not play and then only play a few minutes? But £100 million for Jack Grealish. And again, I think in his view, he got Grealish thinking that there might be some massive upside, which clearly hasn't materialized. But also Grealish is so different from the other wingers that they have because Grealish, to me, slows the game down every time he gets the ball. And I think if I can see it, Pep sees it too, right? He plays to win a foul. He gets the ball. He goes around the circle. He moves to some movement, whatever, right? But it's very different from sort of the bang, bang, Mahrez, Doku, those types of wide players. Or when Bernardo Silva plays wide, he doesn't have Silva's energy in the press that Silva had, and he doesn't have Silva's passing, right? So he said, oh, let me get somebody who's different, right? That's fine. But because he's different, he fits even less with this team. Because when I see him come on, it's almost painful, or I've seen him play like last night, it's almost painful. He's got nothing to do with his team.
Yeah, I went and I watched them as an observer last week rather than as a professional, and I watched him, and he comes on and he's muscle bound. If he came in the studio now, he'd look stick thin compared to me and you. But he came on and he looked heavy, he looked slow, he looked slightly sluggish, and his kind of trick is, and I love watching him because he's the kind of guy that can do things that I could never dream of playing. That's what I want to pay my money for. If I go see a game, I want to see somebody who's got special skills. And he can beat a player and he can dribble a player. And he forced maybe half a dozen free kicks in the game I saw last week against Nottingham Forest. But if he didn't beat the defender or the defender didn't foul him, he just stopped and the whole game stopped, and then the players had to come back into their positions as well. You think of Pep, and he has evolved over the years, but it has been tiki-taka football. He's been one touch, two touch, move it on, and when Jack gets it, he slows it down. Then everybody has to just delay their move by a step or two.
It was fine at his old club because they played a different way at Aston Villa, and if he gets the ball, he beats a man and then beats another man, and then the third guy either fouls him or he beats him too, and then he shoots, right? So but at City, it doesn't work that way. And I think they're really paying a price for that. I want to give credit to Juve.
Absolutely.
Because I don't think it can be easy. I mean, they made so many changes in the summer. This is the Malta 2.0. Chuck in the young players, believe in the academy. They got the Juve, next gen team that they set up. They're actually bringing players through now. But the football's been so dire, so defensive first. And then you get this performance where it's not like they pummeled them, but they showed energy. They showed daring. That sequence where Federico Gatti, the center back, and a center back that everybody laughed at not that long ago, runs the length of the pitch with the ball, it just shows you that when Motta releases the shackles a little bit, they can do stuff that's special.
Yeah, I mean, you could attack me here, but is that not the Italian way? Juventus have started the season and they've proven hard to beat, which is how you start with any team. Sort your defence out, don't lose games. They're not losing games, and now they're beginning to express themselves. And as you say, they've got the players in there. The American connection, wasn't it, this week? Ware and McKennie scoring the goals. So they're now global Juventus as well. So maybe it's a slow build, and maybe you look at this that, what are we, 4 months into the season? Can you really judge the guy 2.0 at this point?
It's a very slow build, and as I've said, he's had his mitigating circumstances because neither Weah nor McKennie would be starters in this Juve side.
However, isn't that a good thing when you get to December? The number of the teams they're blaming the lack of players, yet they're bringing these two guys in and they bring energy to the team and bring.
Well, Weah brings energy. I mean, he's even played at center forward when Vlahovic was out. Vlahovic, by the way, got a goal really important for him because I think he is Juve's real value add. Kenan Yildiz is a phenomenally exciting player. Conceição loves to dribble, and he's little, and his dad was a very good footballer. I mean, I just want to feel like apple don't fall far from the tree on that one. And this also needs to be modulated with the fact that Juventus's defensive leader, Bremer, and their best defender, some might even say his best player, he's been out all season long. The guy that they spent so much money on over the summer, Douglas Luiz, who was supposed to be the hub of the wheel, he's hardly played. I don't know what's going on there. There's been a lot of speculation. He's had injuries. Maybe Thiago Motta doesn't like him anymore. So in that whole context, Motta's taken a ton on his shoulders. Juve have often played poorly, but they certainly rose to the occasion this time around, and it's hard to overstate what the boost is, or how big a boost it is to the club. For me, Motta was brought in to play the kind of football he played at Bologna last year, which was really good football, very attack-minded football. And they still play a lot through the wings, like he did through the wide areas, like he did last year. It's just that they're always conservative, which they were not last year. And I'm wondering if you're right. When I was gonna.
Yeah. See, I look at it. I look at, hey, they're six. What are they? Six in the Champions League, almost guaranteed of a place without having to go through the playoffs. Were they not lost in the league? They're not losing games. Okay, you want excitement and thrills, but at the end of the season, maybe by March, April, they will have added that kind of dimension to their game.
And they've made the team a lot younger, and they've obviously cut wages. So I think if you're Juve, you're cautiously optimistic. Well, I think you have to be optimistic about the direction the club are going in. In terms of whether Motta can take you there, I don't know, but it would be pretty remarkable if everything just suddenly clicks for Motta, and because you can see the outline of the football he wants to play. It's just that the mentality and the execution of it isn't there. So I don't know. I don't know if this is a turning point, but it's certainly a massive confidence booster to so many of these young players he has.